Now, if I said to you that the item on the left is a telephone, you'd probably accuse me, quite rightly, of stating the bleeding obvious. If I then went on to tell you that the item on the right is also a telephone, you'd probably think I was taking the Michael. But actually, although these are both telephones, they work in very different ways, and that is the subject of today's video. So let's start with the phone on the left. Now, it might not surprise you to learn that that is a bog standard telephone. It has a little cable on the end of it, you plug it into the wall, and shock of shocks, you make and receive phone calls on it. Let's move swiftly on to the other one, because this is a phone that is slightly different. Now on the back, this doesn't have a cable hanging out of it. What it does have is a port, and this is an Ethernet port, which you may recognise, and that means that it plugs into your home or office network. And that's when things can start to get interesting, because this telephone uses a technology called Voice over Internet Protocol. It's shortened to Voice over IP and sometimes just VoIP. Now VoIP is an audio communication, but it also can be used for video. So if you've used Skype or FaceTime, then you have used VoIP before. It's probably a technology that you've used lots and lots of times, but may not even realise it. But because it runs over the internet, you can do all sorts of interesting things with it. And the first thing for me, one reason that I got VoIP ages ago, in fact I've had this VoIP set up for a decade now, almost to the day. And the reason I got it was because I started working for myself. I didn't want to have to dig up my driveway in order to put a rather expensive extra phone line in for my work. So VoIP was the obvious answer. It gave me an extra phone number. It's non-geographic, so you can have a number that doesn't necessarily be the location where you are. It can be another location if you want to look as if you're somewhere else. But it means that it is a number that anybody with a normal telephone can dial and get through to you, and it runs over software. So I was able to just simply plug in my VoIP unit, register with a VoIP provider, and hey presto, I had another telephone line without the hassles of having to dig anything up. The really good thing about VoIP is that because it's software, it can do all sorts of clever things. So my VoIP phone, just like a normal phone, I can be on or off. I can leave it to go to a voicemail service. I can take calls. In fact, I can take calls over two lines just through the one cable. The audio quality, if you're talking to another person who's using VoIP, then the audio quality will be better generally than over a normal fixed line telephone. It also has other clever little things it can do. One in particular that you definitely cannot do with a fixed line phone is that I've got an app on my mobile phone, and it uses the geolocation, it uses the location where I am, so that if I get up and I walk away from my home office, the calls can automatically switch from my VoIP telephone number to my mobile. When I get back, my phone knows that I'm back, and it will automatically flip my calls back over to my VoIP handset on my desk. And I can do that, and I like being able to do things that I don't actually have to push a button to activate. It's all fully automatic. I don't have to do that, but it's a useful thing to make sure that my customers can always get in touch with me if I want them to. Another great thing about VoIP is the cost of the calls. And because you have to register with a VoIP provider, and you do have to still pay for the calls, but you can get calling packages just like you can do on fixed line phones. But the really good thing about it, because it's routed over the internet, you can generally get cheaper calls. So I have to make calls sometimes to the United States, here from the UK, and the cost of those calls is the same as if I was using a normal fixed line phone to ring somebody down the road. It really is dirt cheap. It doesn't apply from every location to every other location. The call costs will vary depending on where you are in the world and who you want to call. But generally speaking, the calls are very competitive, shall we say. You don't have to have a dedicated handset like I've got in order to use VoIP. You can use what's called a soft phone, a piece of software on your computer, and effectively if you're using something like FaceTime or Skype, then that's really what you're doing. But it's nice to have a dedicated handset. I wanted one, so that's the thing that I did 10 years ago when I bought this handset, because it enabled me just to have a physical unit on the desk rather than relying on my computer. The big question, of course, when it comes to VoIP is it really worth it? Because if you've got broadband, it will almost certainly be as part of a phone package. So you're already paying for a phone, you're already paying for calls probably, it's probably all bundled in maybe. So using or buying extra VoIP generally isn't worth it for most people. Some suppliers, some ISPs will supply a router now that has a port on the side specifically, an Ethernet port specifically meant for VoIP. But not many, certainly not in the UK, are making great use of that at the moment. But there are reasons why you might want to use VoIP, such as my circumstances where I wanted a business line rather than using my home line. It means that at the end of the day, when I don't want to work anymore and I've had enough, I can push a button and my work calls will go to an answering service, but it still keeps my normal landline free for taking personal calls from double glazing salesmen. But ISPs are looking to move over their phone services to VoIP. If you work in an office, there's a reasonably good chance that your phone system inside your building could be using VoIP, quite possibly, because it's just a better and cheaper infrastructure. So lots of people are using the VoIP technology, but it's not necessarily one that you'll know when you're using it. But because, as I've said already, because it's based really in software, it can do all sorts of useful things, and things that you can do with a normal fixed line phone, and also things that you can't do with a fixed line phone. So that has been an introduction to VoIP, to Voice over IP, Voice over Internet Protocol. It's a technology you've probably used even if you didn't realise it, and it's certainly one that you will see more and more over the coming years. It's not a new technology, not by a long way, but it's certainly one that is becoming more widestream as the internet continues to take over our lives. I hope you enjoyed this rambly, as usual, video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Oh, don't forget to subscribe.